Hey everybody, how y'all doing? I just wanted to talk about a new movie that came out this weekend involving my favorite invertebrate. That's right, a SpongeBob SquarePants Movie 2, or the SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water, though I would rarely refer to it by that title, as I'll describe later on. So, the new SpongeBob movie, coming out I'd say about more than 10 years since the first movie came out. Now we have Bikini Bottom, SpongeBob is a fry cook, but we find out that the story of Bikini Bottom is told through a book that Antonio Banderas, played by a very corny pirate, is telling. And as it turns out, if he has control of this book, he can write the ending, and he actually takes the Krabby Patty formula through means of this story in a sort of meta way that has homages to Duck Amuck that I thought were pretty funny. And he takes the Krabby Patty formula, leaving Bikini Bottom into a complete mess. Now it's up to SpongeBob and Plankton to retrieve the formula again. Now that's the basic plot to the movie, or as close to a plot I can come up with, because as far as the plot to this movie goes, it is a complete mess. And I think that's part of the bad stuff about the film, and in some surprising ways, some of the good aspects about this film. It being bad, it kind of makes me think back to the first movie that came out, whereas I do think it had a clear plot as to how it would all flow together. SpongeBob needs to find the crown, and he goes through this adventure to get the crown, and in that process, he learns a lesson about being an adult, or at least being treated like an adult without having to lose your personality. That was the moral or message or story that was going for the first SpongeBob film. Whereas this film, it doesn't really have that, and if it does have that, it more or less focuses on Plankton's growth versus SpongeBob's growth, which in some aspects I actually found to be one of the good things about this film, whereas Plankton on the show is a villain that everybody could kind of relate to, in that he doesn't always get his plans put together, he's usually one step behind, or it's usually due to his height that causes him to fail in his plans, but I actually think the fact that Plankton was focused as the central aspect of the story actually made me like it a little bit more, because I find it more relatable, and it is his growth and not SpongeBob's growth. SpongeBob just sort of, mentors him into becoming more of a Tiam player, and one of the great running jokes in the film. And in that aspect, I actually like that more, but if it was a little bit more controlled, as far as like a seemingly clear, coherent plot, it would have been better. But for what it is, the good aspects of not having a clear, coherent plot is that it does give in for ways that makes the movie feel more like the show. And in that aspect, it's the characters going on these misadventures and encountering all these surreal, wacky elements that makes for, us to enjoy the film. But back to it being sort of the bad things, because I think it's more bad than it is good, and I guess I should have highlighted the good aspects of it before going into the bad, is that when it focuses on certain scenarios, setups for jokes, they take the setups, they go with the setups, but then they beat it like a dead horse, up to a point where you actually get really bored when they keep going with the same joke over and over again. Like, for example, the movie starts with Plankton trying to steal the Krabby Patty formula. Okay, not uncommon for the show, this happens like all the time. However, they have this setup go up for like forever, more than like 2 minutes, and you're like looking at your clock and you're going, can we just speed this up? Not much of it is that funny, some parts of it are kind of funny, but it just feels dragged. But that kind of happens throughout the film, and because the story's plot doesn't allow for us to really get out of those setups and things, it just, it can get very tedious and tiring, and there's only so much SpongeBob that I love. And that stings because I consider myself to be a huge SpongeBob fan. Like, if I'm ever needing a pick-me-up, I watch season 3 of SpongeBob, I put it in my computer and I watch that for a pick-me-up. I sometimes catch the new seasons. I'm not a fan of everything after the movie, but once in a while you get a good thing like the SpongeBob Christmas special that was stop motion, is indicative of the quality, whereas it's kind of like The Simpsons. Whereas like once in a while you're going to get that one good episode. So that's why I haven't completely given up on SpongeBob. So I don't think it's just that I've given up on SpongeBob and this is the complete end of the series, but that I do feel like that after a while they need to feel more focused. There's a little bit of loss of focus. One thing I want to note too is that the character Patrick is something that's kind of failed in this film. That's the best way I could put it. Patrick always to me was a character that's nonchalant. He's a nonchalant character, he's not completely oblivious, or he's just oblivious but just nonchalant and not a complete idiot. Whereas in this film I feel like he's very irredeemable at some points and kind of too stupid for his own good. And that leads to some pretty bad setups in the film, whereas you think to yourself, wow, would Patrick really do that? And as in fact, he would. I'm kind of glad that more characters have more screen time in this film than they did in the previous film. We got to see more of Sandy, we got to see more of Squidward, we got to see more of Mr. Krabs, whereas it wasn't just SpongeBob and Patrick. And for Antonio Banderas' performance, I wouldn't say it's great. It's over the top as it needs to be, but a little bit too over the top. One thing that really annoyed me about this film is that they call it Sponge Out of Water, whereas they have the characters reach the surface and become computer animated superheroes. I think this was a gimmick made by the marketers. For the most part, this film is a hand-drawn film, and when it is hand-drawn, there's a lot of artistry in it, and there's a lot to enjoy on a visual level when it's hand-drawn animation. And I do applaud the filmmakers for wanting to make a hand-drawn film with some CG elements versus do what everybody else is doing and just make it a computer animated story. So I do appreciate it on that level, and I hope that out of this we can get more hand-drawn films, or at least executives to realize that more animated films can be made out of the story and what's necessary. So overall, if I had to give the SpongeBob SquarePants movie to, or whatever you're going to call it, I would have to say it kind of goes between a 7 and a 6 out of a 10 scale. I think there's a lot to admire about the film versus completely love. I'm probably going to watch the film again just for the animation and the characters that I grew up and loved, but really that's about it. I didn't think it was a complete waste of my time, and I did have some fun with it. Other times I feel like they were trying to aim for the adults, but more or less the adults who like to get high, specifically with time travel sequences. And like I said, some scenarios go on and on and on, and they just never end, and that's one of them, is this, they added this time travel scenario just so that they can introduce a character named Bubbles, who's this omniscient dolphin who sees the universe, and he's got this voice like Tim Curry and Christopher Walken put together with a dolphin. It's this great thing. He's stop motion and everything, but still, I feel like they just, go a little bit too wacky for their own good. And at the same time, they do try to homage things that work about the show. Like, you do have a lot of references. More so than actual things that work about SpongeBob, but references to older seasons. Like, you got the My Leg joke going on. You got characters that we haven't seen in years, like Bubble Bath from Pickles, and Flats the Bully from the episode The Bully. I mean, where do these guys come from? They show up in the movie, and I kind of like that. So there's a lot to admire about the film, more so than actually love and enjoy and watch over and over again. Maybe it will, maybe my opinion will change, but as it is, not a complete waste of my time, but not one that I'm probably going to watch forever and ever and ever, but who knows. Again, that's my thoughts on SpongeBob movie Out of Water 2. Not really out of water, because they don't really go out of the ocean. That's just the marketer's gimmick to, cash in on two popular trends, computer animation and the superhero genre. Hey, Frozen's a computer animated movie, that makes a lot of money, and The Avengers was a superhero movie, that made a lot of money. Maybe we'll market the movie to look like that. But regardless, enjoyed the film, wouldn't say it's the best thing ever. So if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, you can do so. If you'd like to donate to my Patreon so that I keep making better videos, do so as well. Like my Facebook page, all that jazz. Again, my thoughts on the SpongeBob movie. Take care, everybody.